What's up, eco-nerdlings? In this podcast, we're going to be discussing how we protect our food resources and what types of pesticides are out there that we use to protect our food resources. So let's get started. So pest management, or pests. Pests are any organism that interferes in some way with human welfare or activities. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of the next couple of video lectures, over the next 2 slides, you're going to see a series of questions. I want you to go ahead and pause the video lecture, and I want you to write these questions down in your journal. And as we go through the next couple of video lectures, I want to make sure that you spend some time in your notes answering each of the questions. Now that shouldn't be all of your notes, but they should be included in your notes. So make sure you pause, write the questions down on this slide, and then when you unpause, you'll write the questions down on this next slide. So, welcome back. You should have paused and written your questions down. So, protecting food resources and pest management. So, organisms found in nature, such as spiders, naturally control populations of most pest species. And that's kind of part of Earth's free ecological services, kind of like the circle of life. Spiders keep a lot of other unwanted pests in check. However, we kill spiders. So, we've come up with a lot of different types of means to kill all of the other different types of insects that we find as pests. Not to mention a whole slew of other things that we use pesticides for, which we're about to get into. So we use chemicals to repel or kill pest organisms as plants have done for millions of years. Chemists have developed hundreds of different types of chemicals or pesticides that can kill or repel a whole gamut of different types of pests, from plants to fungus to different types of animals to insects. Pests vary in their persistence, or pesticides vary in their persistence, meaning some last for a very long time, while others are very short term. Each year, more than 250,000 people in the United States become ill because of household pesticides that we use. So what are some of the advantages and some of the disadvantages of using pesticides? Well, some of the advantages are they can save lives because they can kill off unwanted pests that can cause disease, such as mosquitoes. They can increase the food supply. They're profitable to use. They work extremely fast, and they're safe if they're used properly. Some of the disadvantages of using pesticides are that they promote genetic resistance. They can kill natural pest enemies. They can create new pest species. They can pollute the environment, and they can also harm wildlife as well as people. So there are many different types of pesticides, and each one basically is specific to what they kill. So here are some of the types of pesticides that we have. We have herbicides, which is a toxic chemical that kills plants. So we have weeds growing in our garden that we want to get rid of, so we use a type of herbicide. Same thing for farmers that are growing massive amounts of crops. They're going to use herbicides to kill off any unwanted plants that are intruding on the crop that they're trying to grow. We have insecticides, which are toxic chemicals that kill insects, such as fleas, ants, ticks, hornets, roaches. All of those are killed by using insecticides. We have rodenticides, which is kind of self-explanatory. Those kill rodents, like this little mouse right here. So, mice, rats, any type of rodent like that, it can kill. We have fungicides, which are toxic chemicals that can kill fungus, such as mushrooms, different types of molds. We have nematicides, which are toxic chemicals that kill nematodes, or roundworms. We have algaecides, which are toxic chemicals that can kill off algae. And a lot of times we actually use those in fish containers. We have bactericides, which are toxic chemicals that can kill bacteria. We have pesticides, which are toxic chemicals that kill off unwanted fish. So there are different types of pesticides, and they're classified by how long they last, how toxic they are. So we have hard persistent pesticides. That's our first big category. That's characterized, they're composed of compounds that retain their toxicity for a very long period of time. They work their way up the food chain through all of the different trophic levels in the animals, and they can actually bioaccumulate in fatty tissues, and they stay indefinitely. So some examples of this that we've watched in some of the past documentaries over the year. We watched one that talked about bioaccumulation of mercury in larger fish. So in a lot of lakes and rivers, the larger the fish you catch, you don't want to eat it because it could actually contain mercury. Another example you guys watched was we talked about the beluga whales in the St. Lawrence River. And there are so many pesticides and chemical runoffs that all of the beluga whales started developing all kinds of diseases and cancers. And it gets to the point where it bioaccumulates in their fat layer. Well, when mothers birth their calves, the calves obviously have to nurse. And where does all of that milk come from? Well, they pull on the reserves of the fat. So all of these toxic chemicals are then going into the milk that they're using to nurse their young. And a lot of the young actually die because of poisoning, because the mother's milk has so many toxins in it from all of the bioaccumulation of those pesticides and other toxins that have accumulated into the blubber layer or the fat layer. So those are some of the examples that we've seen throughout the year. An example of a hard persistent pesticide would be DDT, as well as many other chlorinated hydrocarbons. And we also have the other large class, which is called soft pesticides. They're characterized by reduced risk pesticides. They're very short term, and they don't harm the environment or man. So some examples of soft pesticides include soaps, oils, different types of plant extracts, baking soda, as well as dish liquids. So again, soft pesticides, not very harmful. So we have different chemical classes now. So we've talked about the different types of pesticides or specific pesticides like herbicides, fungicides, pesticides. And we've also talked about the two big classes. We talked about the hard, which is long-term, kind of dangerous, and we've talked about the soft. Now we're going to talk about the actual chemical classes of pesticides. So we have organochlorines or chlorides. These are hard persistent. They're toxic in the long term. They're not very toxic in the short term. So an example is DDT. Short term, DDT wasn't too harmful, but long term it bioaccumulated and caused all kinds of damage to a lot of different species. Most familiar would be I believe it's the California condor. DDT worked its way up the food chain and eventually started making the shells of the eggs a lot more brittle, so whenever the mother would go to sit on her egg, it would crack. We have organophosphates. These are soft and non-persistent. They can be highly toxic in short-term use, and they also require very specific safety equipment for application. An example of this is parathion. We have carbamates. These are soft and non-persistent. It's not as toxic as the other two that we've spoken about. Most of them are over-the-counter pesticides. They don't last very long, so these are ones that you can go to Walmart or Home Depot or Lowe's and get to scatter around your yard for, fire ants, roaches, things like that. So what about the historical use of pesticides? Well, back in the day, before we had all kinds of awesome chemists and all of the recent technology, we had natural pesticides. A lot of them were perthrins, which came from chrysanthemums, which are a type of flower, as well as sulfur and garlic. Then our Industrial Revolution happened. We had a lot more technological advances, modern chemistry, and all of that came into play. And we started creating synthetic pesticides. And these were used during and after World War II up till currently today. So I hope you learned a lot about different types of pesticides, different classes, the chemical classes of pesticides. We'll delve more into that in the next video lecture. So I hope this was helpful. If you'd like to rewatch this or any other video lectures, you can go to my website at www.nerdlingscience.com. Well, this is the Queen Nerdling signing off for now. Stay nerdy till next time.